Let's talk about silence, but not the good kind. Not the peaceful quiet of a sleeping house or the den of winter after a fresh snow. The hum of the refrigerator, the chirp of crickets, the distant drone of traffic hits the soundtrack to normal life. It's what tells us we're safe. But what happens when someone cuts the feed, when those threads are violently snipped, and you're left with nothing but a quiet that's listening? I'm talking about a silence that feels wrong. The kind that drops so suddenly, so completely. The nights there had a predictable rhythm, a comforting symphony of the mountains. A whole chorus of crickets and katydids, the sigh of wind rustling the tall oaks, the far-off call of a whippoorwill. It was a living, breathing soundscape that wrapped the small house in a blanket of safety, a car. A dog, nothing. The silence was so absolute it felt physical, like pressure building in her ears. You feel it too, her grandmother whispered, and her voice sounded shockingly loud in the crushing stillness. It's the kind of quiet that feels fundamentally wrong, a vacuum where life is supposed to be. She stood between Sarah and the sound, a guardian in the dark. The tapping stopped, the silence crashed back in, even thicker than before. For what felt like an eternity, neither of them moved, they barely breathed. That it feels like the whole world just held its breath, and is waiting for something terrible to happen. The breathing was gone, the weight on the bed was gone. Another story woven into the region's long history of high strangeness tales whispered about spiritual battles and things that lurk in the quiet places of the hells. Sarah's story is a chilling reminder that sometimes the oldest fears are the most potent, and a sudden quiet where there should be life is the most terrifying sound of all. He wasn't chasing ghosts, he was a connoisseur of quiet. He loved the dead stillness of abandoned places, the way history settles into a deep, reverent hush. His personal holy grail was the Blackwood Pines Sanatorium, a sprawling, derelict hospital deep in a state forest. Legendary among explorers for one thing, its unnerving lack of sound. He realized that even the sound of his own clothes rustling seemed to be swallowed by the air the second it was made. Out in nature, a sudden silence means only one thing: there's a predator nearby. He could feel it listening. All the prey goes quiet, hoping not to be seen. He suddenly felt like a field mouse, frozen under the shadow of a hawk. He sensed a presence nearby, not something he could see or hear, but something he could feel in the void. The instinct to run finally overpowered the need to stay quiet. He scrambled to his feet, and the sound of his boots on the tile floor was like a gunshot in the dead air. Each footstep, each ragged gasp for breath, felt like it was feeding the thing right behind him. He didn't dare look back, but he could feel the silence itself gathering, taking form in his wake. His love for quiet was replaced by a deep-seated phobia. We're taught to be afraid of the dark, but maybe the darkness is just the stage. The real horror begins when the world goes silent. When all the sounds that keep us grounded disappear, we're left floating in a sea of terrifying possibilities. He now lives in the heart of the city, his apartment a constant mess of noise. Fans, a white noise machine, the TV on at all hours. He can never, ever let it get quiet because he knows. And if you want more tales from the depths of night, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. You wouldn't want to miss what comes next. In the quiet. He knows the silence from that sanatorium followed him out that night. And he knows it's just waiting, patiently, for a single moment of stillness to close in and finish the hunt. It was a cold, hungry void, and it was gaining on him. He knew with a certainty that defied all logic. Making a sound meant inviting it in. Breaking the silence meant giving it a target. And intelligence in the stillness, and it was getting closer. He remembered once reading about a sensory deprivation experiment where someone claimed to have sensed a being that hunted in the absence of sound. He'd laughed it off as fiction. He wasn't laughing now. He coughed, and the sound was small and pathetic, dying instantly with no echo. The silence was no longer an absence of noise. It felt like an active presence, a heavy blanket smothering the world. He was terrified that the sound of his own heartbeat, the blood rushing in his ears, was acting like a beacon in the dark. A low, guttural breathing, and it was close, right next to her bed. What if the silence asterisk is asterisk the thing that's hunting? It was the most beautiful, chaotic, wonderful sound he had ever heard. He just lay there, gasping, letting the symphony of life wash over him. Right before dawn, as the first gray light touched the horizon, the world's volume slowly faded back in. A single cricket started its song, then another joined, and soon the whole symphony of the night had cautiously returned, as if it, too, had been hiding from something. We rely on sound more than we realize. The moment he stepped inside, the air was cool and dead still. It was perfect, no dripping water, no groaning pipes, no scurrying pests. Just a profound, peaceful silence. He set up his gear in the old nurse's station, feeling completely at ease. Her eyes were locked on her grandmother, who was now staring past her into the bedroom, her face a mask of pure terror. But as the night wore on, he started to feel the quality of the silence shift. It wasn't peaceful anymore, it was absolute. The breathing got louder, raspier, a wet, ragged sound that suggested something was deeply, horribly wrong. Then, the mattress beside her dipped, as if a great weight had just settled onto it. A silent scream was trapped in Sarah's throat as she scrambled backward, pressing herself into the headboard. They weren't just sitting in silence, they were being watched asterisk by asterisk the silence. It felt heavy, loaded, like it was waiting for something. The room was instantly flooded with harsh, yellow light. Then a new sound started from inside the house. A soft, rhythmic tapping coming from the living room wall. For generations, people there have whispered about strange lights, voices in the woods, and things you just can't explain in the isolated hollers. This account comes from one of those places, passed down from a woman who says it happened to her as a child. Tonight, we're going to explore that exact terror. 1 second, the night was alive with its familiar chorus. The next, it was gone, not faded out, but switched off like a giant hand had just smothered the world. The cricket stopped mid-chirp, the wind died. Even the leaves outside her window froze in a dead stillness. First, we have a story that comes to us from the shadowed hills of Appalachia, story that feels all too real. And after that, we'll descend into a nightmare where the silence isn't just a warning sign. It asterisk is asterisk the hunter asterisk asterisk part 1, the Appalachian anomaly, the silence of the hills asterisk asterisk. The Appalachian Mountains are ancient places, steeped in folklore and tales that feel as old as the stones themselves. Her name was Sarah, and she was spending the summer at her grandmother's small farmhouse deep in the West Virginian countryside. Then one hot August night, as Sarah lay in her bed reading, it happened. And it wasn't a sound that alerted her, but the complete and utter lack of it. Sarah sat bolt upright, her heart starting to hammer against her ribs. She strained her ears, desperate to hear anything. A floorboard creaked in the hall. She saw the silhouette of her grandmother in the doorway. Sarah could only nod. The feeling was suffocating. Her grandmother grabbed the heavy iron poker from the fireplace, her knuckles turning white. Then came the sound that would stay with Sarah for the rest of her life. It came from inside her own bedroom. She didn't dare look. Her grandmother let out a choked cry and lunged. Not toward the bed, but for the light switch on the wall. And there was nothing there, but outside, the silence held. They spent the rest of that night huddled together in the lit living room, just waiting for the sun. What happened that night was never explained. For the people in that area, it just became part of the local lore, a story like that is terrifying enough. But it makes you wonder ... what if the silence wasn't just a side effect of the haunting? Asterisk asterisk part 2, the fictional tale, the sanatorium of stillness asterisk asterisk. Leo was an urban explorer, but not for the reasons you might think. He got there at dusk with the setting sun casting long, skeletal shadows from the empty windows. For the first few hours, it was everything he wanted. He just sat in the dark, soaking it in. The low hum of the wind he'd heard outside was gone. The faint whisper of the distant highway had vanished. A primal, ancient fear started to prickle at the back of his neck. He tried to explain it away, the building's thick insulation, the remote location. But he knew, deep down, this was different. His heart began to pound, a frantic drum against the suffocating quiet, and that's when the real fear kicked in. He forced himself to take shallow breaths, to sit perfectly still, every muscle locked. The pressure in his ears grew, the silence felt like it was condensing, focusing right on him. But the terror was just too much. He burst through the main doors and collapsed onto the gravel driveway outside, and the world came roaring back. The noise was a physical blow. The wind howled in the pines, crickets shrieked their frantic songs, an owl hooted from a distant tree. Leo was never the same, so whether it's the oppressive quiet of the Appalachian hills or the predatory stillness in an abandoned hospital, the lesson is the same. It brings us back to a primal truth. Sometimes the scariest thing in the woods isn't the creature you can hear, but the reason everything else has gone quiet. So I have to ask, have you ever experienced a silence that felt wrong? A quiet so deep it felt like it was listening to you? If you've got a story about a silence that wasn't empty, I want to hear about it in the comments.